now a romance novel, Save the Galaxy, by Ariana Deralte. Chapter 18, Vandermeer, Part 4. Holdan had spent his evening briefing Faye, as she had asked him to call her, on the situation with Vandermeer and Obi-Wan. She was, to put it frankly, a breath of fresh air after dealing with Jin this past week. Faye confirmed with the Force that Obi-Wan was likely on the deep-sea mining platform, then left to track down Jin and the transmitters for the bomb collars on the slaves. Holdan, who had been awake for nearly a day now without rest, grabbed a few hours of sleep before his Vode arrived. They landed near the home planet mine. Holdan had expected perhaps one ship of available Verde that the Mandalore had ordered out. Instead, there were 3, one of which was an antique, to put it politely. When they heard a Jettiga was in trouble, they came running. Plus the chance to meet Jetty and some fighting like Tuga at the dinner time, said Voke, their leader. Voke was a Twi'lek male in the true Mandalorian, Verde. Holdan had worked with him before. The antique enthusiasts were Clan Eldar and must have recently switched their allegiances to the Mandalore due to the Mandalorians' dilemma. Holdan had heard they were neutral during the Clan and Civil War. They're not going to enjoy meeting Jin, pointed out Holdan. Vogue gave a toothy smile, sharp teeth burned. That Shabur is going to be the target of so many Stern Master bolts. He caught Holdan's look. Don't worry, Marino said we can't kill him. I'll take a few pot shots at Jin myself, admitted Holdan, but I don't want our hatred of him to interfere with saving Obuka. You claim him already? Asked Vogue, a bit too casually for Holdan's liking. Vogue was married, but Holdan didn't know if he had any. I asked. He asked me to wait for his answer. Hopefully that would be enough to keep the more rabid Verde away from trying to adopt his future aunt. Faye's appearance saved him any future discussion of Obi-Wan. Her beauty obviously captivated quite a few of the Verde. She tossed him a strangely shaped piece of metal. That's the key to get the bomb collars off. They've all been safely deactivated and their detonators destroyed, she explained. Jin. I'm obsessed with that former part of one of his Xanatos. When I told him where Obi-Wan was, he assumed I would rescue him and gave me this. She gestured to a lightsaber on her belt. Holdan had assumed it was hers. I thought his Padawan was dead, said Holdan. He's turned to the dark side and is possibly the leader of Off-World, according to Master Jin. He had Obi-Wan's lightsaber on him when Jin confronted him yesterday. Holdan had seen Xanatos around, a handsome dark-haired man being very friendly and helpful to the home planet mine after their main mine collapsed. He had a fleeting amount of sympathy for Jin, since losing a Padawan to the dark side seemed to be the equivalent of your ad joining Deathwatch or worse than your Mandalorians. But it was no excuse for the man's poor treatment of Obuka. We should leave it, plan our attack on the ships, suggested Vogue. They did. Communications would have to be taken out first, so the overseers didn't tell the off-world main office what was happening, but it would have to be simultaneous to freeing the slaves, some of which might be deep in the mines. Lots of slave operations had standing orders for guards to kill the slaves rather than let them be freed. During the stillness of the final minutes before they reached the deep-sea mining platform, Holdan sent a comm to the head of the home planet mine, Klata, with all the information he had on Xanatos. He had a feeling that Jin was not keeping her up to date and that she didn't know about the hidden off-world explosives Obi-Wan and Tremba had found. Their plans had to be heavily modified when they arrived at the platform to find the slaves already in revolt. They must have noticed that their collars were deactivated. Unsurprisingly, Holdan soon spotted Obi-Wan in the thick of them. He and a group of slaves were smartly defending the communications office from the Imbat guards, so they couldn't contact the mainland. Half the Mando Ade headed inside the platform to help the slaves. The rest began to work their way across the platform to the fighting around the offices and Obi-Wan. Holdan was in the middle of using his jetpack to maneuver closer to his future ad when Master Faye took the field. If asked, Holdan would have said he expected her to pull a lightsaber from somewhere and start fighting. Instead, she strode confidently across the platform, stepping neatly out of the way of blaster bolts before they hit. When one got past, she casually raised a hand and absorbed it into her palm. Since when could Jedi Griffin do that? There was no more time to watch. He landed on the roof of the communications office, ducking down to avoid being such a large target for the Imbat guards. He crawled over to the edge, ready to drop the key to Obi-Wan once he got his attention, but at that moment there was a strange rushing sound. He focused beyond the Imbat guards, just in time to see Faye toss Obi-Wan's lightsaber into the air that was now swirling with tiny particles of ore, blasters, and whatever other small items had been tied down to the platform. She stood in the middle of the storm, untouched, while the glittering black ore particles enveloped the Imbat guards, who started to cry out in terror before choking on faces full of black dust. Honestly, Holtan didn't blame them. He was sure some of his Vode found the side of Faye right now arousing, but he preferred the friendly and dedicated Jedi he'd talked to this morning. Obi-Wan's lightsaber came curving around the cloud, straight to Obi-Wan's hands. A second later, it was ignited, and Obi-Wan charged into battle. Oh, that aside, so much for giving him the key to his collar. Since the nearest Imbat guards were occupied fighting ore dust, Holdan took some shots at them while he jumped down to the ground. I have a key to get your collars off if any of you are interested. I am not, said one with pale skin and very long arms, and laughed. No, I lie. They held out a hand for the key. Holdan covered for them as they removed the collars, the one with long arms flinging him over the side into the ocean. Probably a good idea, considering they still had explosives inside them. Fortunately, Obi-Wan came bounding back to check on his fence. Holdan? He said, disbelief written on his face. Well, become good to see you in one piece. It was sad that the kid had thought he'd come for him. Hold still for a moment. He fit the key in the bomb collar, removing the damn thing. The skin below it was rubbed raw with blisters and covered in streaks of ore dust. The Imbat guards near them were all dead or incapacitated. Holdan gestured the freed slaves toward the ships, but was unsurprised when Obi-Wan instead followed him towards the doors, which led deeper into the mining platform. He could hear Volk shouting orders over the comms. The Imbat guards below had managed to barricade themselves in a room that both provided them cover from the attacking Mandalorians, and also trapped the slaves who had been down in the mines, far away from any access. He relayed this information to Obi-Wan as they headed down. They found the Mandalorians on one side of what looked to be a cafeteria. Faye was standing next to Volk, eyes focused on the steady stream of blaster fire that was hitting a solid metal table, which was blocking the lower half of the door the Imbats were hiding behind. We have to free the rest of the slaves now, declared Obi-Wan. They don't get set down with enough air to breathe much longer. He stood tall, the red ring around his neck very obvious. Holdan recognized the shifts in the armor around him. His Atika had got their attention. Thanks to Kara, Holdan had seen an outfit for it first. Well said, Obi-Wan, said Faye. Thank you, Master Faye. The kid sounded a bit bashful. Faye must have introduced herself while Obi-Wan was fighting before. Left or right? Asked Faye. Holdan wondered if they were talking in their heads as well. Right, said Obi-Wan after a moment. Would you kindly keep them occupied for a few minutes? Faye asked of Volk. He nodded, obviously curious to see what the Jedi would do. Holdan rolled his eyes under his bouche and prepared to follow after Obi-Wan. He wasn't just going to let the Jedi have all the fun, or his ad charge into battle without him. The Mando Ada intensified their fire, making the guards duck their heads behind their table shield and not notice the Jedi breaking for the sides of the room. Holdan had to drop into a run to keep up with Obi-Wan. Both Jedi stopped to the side of the table. Faye raised one hand and the table simply lifted away. The guards behind it were now perfect targets for the Mando Ada's shots, while Obi-Wan cut off one of the arms of a guard who tried to dive free. The table came crashing down on the head of another. As Holdan was coming to expect for fighting with Jedi, they didn't stop there. Both leapt over the pile of bodies in a running roll. Faye took out the last of the guards, while Obi-Wan headed for the door controls to the airlock which led to the mines. Holdan occupied himself, making sure the rest of the guards were either dead or incapacitated. All clear, he said over his comm once he was done. The rest of the slaves were staggering out of the mines, clearly low on oxygen but otherwise unharmed. Obi-Wan was frantically looking through the remaining breathing masks. They're all safe, Obi-Wan, said Holdan. I can sense 2 more down there. Holdan looked over to Frey, who nodded agreement. We have Verde, whose armor can seal and has its own air supply, suggested Luke. I can guide you to them from here, said Faye. Obi-Wan looked torn. Let them take point, Obi-Wan, urged Holdan. Obi-Wan's clothes were held together by threads and covered in black ore dust. Holdan could see red marks all over the kid's body from electro jabbers whenever the kid moved. They had killed the guards too quickly, in his opinion. The nearest Verde with sealed armor presented themselves to Obi-Wan like they were lambing up for inspection. Obi-Wan quickly handed them rebreathers and masks for the 2 mining slaves trapped below, and they headed in. Faye had her eyes closed with a hand pressed against the wall. It was several long minutes before the Verde returned. One slave was walking now that they had air through a new mask. The other was slung over one of their shoulders. The Verde marched straight out the doors, headed for the medics. With them out, Holdan was finally able to convince Obi-Wan to leave. Obi-Wan wanted to check on the rest of his friends, particularly the long-armed one, whose name was Guerra, but the alien had sensibly gotten on one of the ships already. Then Obi-Wan detoured to grab a small box with an incomplete circle on it from one of the offices. The medic on the main ship, Tolzan, scanned Obi-Wan from head to toe, then forced him into the pressure to wash the ore dust off so they could bandage the multiple wounds across his body. Holdan was just glad there wasn't any internal damage. Holdan went to hunt down some clothes for the kid. This also gave Obi-Wan some privacy while the medic put a depressing number of extra patches and bandages on. When he got back, he noticed Faye was sitting against the wall in a corner of the infirmary, eyes closed, while the box Obi-Wan had taken from the platform hovered in front of her. She seemed unaware of how many Mandalorians were staring at her. Holdan handed Obi-Wan his clothes, but only watched Faye out of the corner of his eye rather than the lustful or curious looks she was getting from the rest of the room. The box spun slowly in the air before there was a soft click. The broken circle on the top of it was now a full circle, which seemed to bypass the more obvious lock on its side. The box settled on Faye's lap, and she opened her eyes. The lid lifted off. Faye stiffened. Everyone crowded closer. There, nestled snugly in the box, was an ion bomb. If it went off, the entire ship and a few kilometers to either side would be vaporized. "There was a box like that at the Agricole facility," said Obi-Wan, the horror evident in his voice. Who knew how many more were scattered about? Was the entire Criffing planet ready to blow? Holdan hung his head. He really did have the worst luck.